over there. You have to speak up because it's a big room full of people.
Stand up.
It seems like more than a coincidence that the war in Gaza was just 2 weeks before the Bush administration left office. Do you see any connection between all of their evidence at all?
No. I don't want to be a stickler for words, but I'm not going to call it a war because there was no war in Gaza. But I don't think there was a connection with the Bush administration leaving office. There was a connection with the end of the attack on Gaza, which was just before the Barack Obama inaugural, and presumably the message was transmitted, don't ruin my coronation. So that's probably likely. But Israel had begun the attack, plans for the attack on Gaza as early as March 2007. The Israeli papers reported that the only reason Ehud Barak entered into the ceasefire with Israel is it needed time to prepare the attack. And once the pieces were in place, all it needed was the pretext. And it waited, as most of you remember, it waited till November 4th when the attention of everybody in the U.S. was riveted on the results of the election. With everybody riveted on the results, that's when they invaded Gaza, killed 6 Palestinian militants, and ended the ceasefire. But that had, I don't think, much to do with Barack Obama, apart from the end. Or with Bush, apart from the end.
Yeah. Yes.
One is just for the benefit of the audience. I wondered if you could say what the population of Gaza is and the square miles of it. And then after that, if you wouldn't mind saying something about current events with what just happened with the settlements in declaration in East Jerusalem. And if the policy seems to be shifting at all in the U.S. Thanks.
Well, I think the population of Gaza, it ranges, but most people put about 1.5 million. Is that a fair estimate? And 360 square miles. Is that a 300 square kilometers? Yeah, roughly those are the figures. As to the most recent current events, I don't personally attach much importance to them. It's pretty similar to what happened between George Bush Sr. during the Bush-Baker years and Yitzhak Shamir when there was a $10 billion loan that was supposed to go to Israel. But Shamir had this kind of in-your-face style about expanding settlements like Netanyahu. He offended Bush and Baker, and then they withheld the $10 billion loan. It's almost certain that because the U.S. withheld the loan, Israel put Mr. Shamir out of office. Rabin came into office, Yitzhak Rabin. In fact, settlements expanded at a much faster rate under Rabin than they did under Yitzhak Shamir. But the loan went through, and there was about $450 million deducted from the loan because of Israeli settlement expansion. But the U.S. didn't even count at that time, didn't even account building in East Jerusalem as settlement expansion. The only point I would want to make is I suspect some people here are from the Harvard Law School community. I don't know how many. I can't recognize you by face, apart from the person standing next to me, is that there's so much legal obfuscation about what's going on. So yesterday, I don't read her Isabel Kirshner. She's just, she's intolerable. But I did look at the headline, and she says, Israel is now building homes in East Jerusalem. And that was something, the headline was something like that. But a factually correct headline would have said, Israel building illegal homes in illegally annexed East Jerusalem. That's the record. And I don't want to, be absurd for me to try to pull rank on, eminent legal scholars. But these are not controversial issues in international law. And it's a complete falsehood to claim that they are. Let's just take the 2 cases that are most in the news now, the settlements and East Jerusalem. In July 2004, the highest judicial body in the world, the International Court of Justice, it rendered an advisory opinion on the wall that Israel is building in the occupied territories. And in the course of rendering an opinion on the legality of the wall, which it decided was illegal, it had to address many preliminary issues, prior issues, among them East Jerusalem and the settlements, those two issues which figure now so prominently in the news. What the ICJ found? Well, it found that under international law, and they're very clear, they say that the West Bank, comma, including East Jerusalem, is occupied Palestinian territory. The West Bank, comma, including East Jerusalem, is occupied Palestinian territory. It said that the settlements were, quoting the UN Security Council, a flagrant violation of international law. What was the vote in the ICJ? Well, you judge for yourself whether it was close. The vote was 14-1. On these particular issues, the issues of the settlements in East Jerusalem, there were no dissents registered. Thomas Bergenthal, he didn't actually write a dissent, he wrote what's called a separate opinion. And in his separate opinion, he did, not a separate, declaration, excuse me. He didn't write a dissent, he wrote a declaration. And in his declaration, where he went through point by point the places where he disagreed with the majority, he did not express any dissent on the question of East Jerusalem being occupied Palestinian territory. And furthermore, Mr. Bergenthal was very explicit. He says it is absolutely clear that under Article 49 of the Fourth Geneva Convention, the settlements are illegal. So on the question of the settlements, the vote was 15-0. But when you read the Times, as I did yesterday, they call these settlements, they don't call them settlements, they call these building projects contentious. There's nothing contentious about them. They are illegal under international law. And there are not claimants, well, there are claimants to East Jerusalem, but only one of those claimants has a legal title to them, and that's the Palestinians.
Let's see, I'm going to call on someone back there. Yeah, yes, you.
I have a practical question for you. We have a group west of Boston, and we're calling our reps and we're writing letters. Would you agree or would you disagree that one of the key issues is the money that the United States gives to Israel? And if we stopped giving that money, could that go a long way toward a peace process? Is that something our group should be working on?
Well, first of all, just to come to the end of your question, you don't have to stop giving the money, you only have to threaten to stop, and the show would be over tomorrow. My general opinion is that the most prudent strategy to try to achieve a just and equitable settlement of the conflict is to use the tools of international law. And that bears directly on the question that you just raised. At the end of the attack on Gaza, Amnesty International put out a quite impressive report entitled Fueling Conflict. And in that report, it went through all the countries which are supplying Israel with weapons. And it's quite a substantial list. And Amnesty International made the following points. It said under international law, it's illegal to transfer weapons to a consistent violator of human rights, a country that's a consistent violator of human rights. And it said under domestic American law, it's illegal to transfer weapons to a country which is a consistent violator of human rights. And so Amnesty International called for a comprehensive total arms embargo on Israel and on Hamas. On Hamas, it's pretty meaningless. It's arms embargo on firecrackers and Roman candles. But in the case of Israel, it's quite significant. And that's the weapon we should be using. We should be saying that Amnesty International, not an ultra-left, not an extreme organization, the most respected human rights organization in the world, it's calling for a total cutoff of arms transfers to Israel. And I would have to say I would highly recommend people